Was released from jail on licence in October, having served half of a 5-year sentence for rape. The question of whether Evans should be able to resume his career as a footballer has aroused strong arguments and emotions. Evans has always maintained he's innocent and is awaiting a judicial review of his case. But on Thursday, Oldham Athletic announced that they would not, after all, be signing the player. For the news at 10, sports editor Dan Rowan reported on the case.
Despite his goal-scoring ability, Evans has now been turned down by a host of clubs and tonight blamed what he called mob rule for the breakdown of his move to the League One side.
But has BBC News incited that mob rule? In fact, scores of viewers contacted Newswatch to say they think so. Here's Milo O'Neill. I'm writing to express my concern about what appears to be a moral crusade against the ex-footballer Ched Evans. The BBC is carrying far more content on this than appears on other news outlets and seems to be attempting to sway public opinion in a manner that will put him in a position where he is essentially unemployable. And Mick Tonks was one of a number to make this point. I see Ched Evans appears to have changed his name to convicted rapist Ched Evans on every news item run by the BBC. Unless, of course, this is just your way of sensationalising someone in the news. Well, in our Salford studio is the BBC's head of sports news, Richard Burgess. Richard, it was interesting that some viewers might even think it's surprising that the BBC did get a number of complaints on the coverage saying it was biased against Ched Evans. A moral crusade to make him unemployable. What do you say?
No, I don't think so. I think we've been very careful to reflect both sides of this story. I mean, it is a story that has really interested our audiences, really engaged them, and I think that's partly because it divides opinion. And we have been very careful to reflect both Ched Evans' side of the story and obviously those who believe he shouldn't go back into football. But as I say, it's a story that has really interested the audience. In fact, you know, it's been our most read story on the BBC Sport website this week by some distance. So we've been reflecting that, and we've been reflecting both sides of an interesting debate.
If he weren't a footballer, would this story be getting the level of attention and coverage it is about him trying to find work?
Well, I think that's part of the story, isn't it? He's a high-profile figure, and there's this question of whether footballers should be role models, and that's been part of the debate. I mean, he's a footballer who played international football for Wales, he played for Manchester City, and I think that's why this story has created so much interest among our audience.
There is a fear or a feeling by some of the viewers who've contacted Newswatch that there's a momentum that's been generated and that sort of ends up justifying or fueling more coverage and more attention on this.
Well, I think we're always careful about that, and you do need to be careful with 24-hour news that you don't saturate a story, that you don't overdo it. But it's been a story that's developed over a number of weeks. We've had to follow those developments, and as I say, it's a story that actually has continued to interest and engage our audience throughout. Sometimes find with long-running stories that the interest begins to drop off. That really hasn't been the case with this story, and I think it is because it's really divided opinion and people have had different views on it, and we've done our best to reflect all those views.
Ethically, it's quite challenging as well, I would have thought, partly because social media has had such a momentum and to some extent changed the story with, the decision of Oldham at the last minute then to pull out of their offer.
Yes, it's been a big part of the story. In truth, it's often a big part of a lot of stories nowadays, and you do have to judge, the level of that the debate on social media, and we do that. But I think the debate on social media has really reflected what we've been hearing directly from our own audience, who are divided on this issue and very interested about this issue. So I think we've been right to reflect that.
Richard Burgess, thank you. Thank you for all your comments this week. If you want to share your opinions on BBC News and Current Affairs or even appear on the programme,